The show focused on delivering beneficial information on everything to do with products and services that can improve your life. This is Experts on Call on AM 650.
Welcome back to the program. I'm Sterling Fox, joined in studio by Tony Gioventu, the Executive Director of the Condominium Homeowners Association of BC. They have a fantastic website. If you're a Strata person and have questions or issues or just need to know more about Strata living, I will highly recommend a visit to their website, CHOA or CHOA.BC. .ca, a terrific website. Tony, I want to follow up on the theme that Sarah established in our opening segment, a whole matter of bringing a live tree into a strata complex. In Sarah's case, there was an issue about whether it was legal even or not. But let's deal with the insurance aspects of this. I mentioned earlier, rental apartments absolutely forbid real Christmas trees for obvious fire hazard reasons. Some condos permit it, some don't. What happens if a live tree is brought into someone's condo and it causes a fire and damage not only to that individual unit, but maybe to the hallways and some common property? We're talking insurance here now, I guess, more than anything else, aren't we?
Well, if you're talking about an apartment-style building or a high-rise or a townhouse complex, what we're talking about is who's insuring the building. And under the Strata Property Act, the Strata Corporation has to maintain full replacement value insurance for the common assets and the fixtures of the building. And that's basically, when you think about that, that's basically everything built by the owner-developer except for removable appliances the day before the first person moved in.
Okay.
So you have a finished lot that has even appliances and things in it, built in, but all those things are attached or fixed to the building, are part of the fixtures of the building. The Strata has to maintain full replacement value insurance on all of those assets and fixtures at all times.
Okay.
So the question is always not who caused the damage. So let's just say that in Sarah's case, somebody brings in a live tree and there's a fire, and you can be sure the fire is, especially if there's a sprinkler system in the building, is going to cause a lot of damage to a lot of units, right? There'll be smoke and water and fire damage, and depending on how quickly it gets addressed. And a tree fire is extremely dangerous because of the sudden increased level of heat that it produces so quickly, right? So it's it's a fuel base as well as the energy that it produces at the same time in the building. So it's going to be a lot of damage. So the question you always ask when you have an insurance claim is what was damaged first. And if what was damaged are the common assets and the fixtures in the building and the structure of the building and all those things that the Strata had to insure, then that's covered under the Strata's insurance policy.
Okay.
Even if the Strata had a bylaw that said no trees, trees are prohibited, and somebody brought in a tree, it still is what was insured or what was damaged.
Oh, really?
What was damaged determines the insurance for the policy.
Oh, so the legality of the actual tree having been brought in doesn't factor into the insurance outcome then?
Doesn't change the insurance outcomes. The insurance, because it's still, those fixtures and assets are still in essence, the property of the corporation. It goes back to that concept in a Strata, your home is not your castle.
Right.
Because those things are the items that have to be insured by the Strata Corporation. And you may have exclusive use and access to them, but they are still part of the fixtures and assets of the corporation.
Back to a ride on SkyTrain through a place like Burnaby, for example, coming through the Metrotown corridor and heading to downtown, and all of those condos and Strata outfits around the Metrotown area. Lovely at this time of year, but really, one balcony is just brilliant. You can see it for miles, and then the 4 balconies around it are blacked out. So, it's really an individual thing. Do some buildings actually prohibit the decoration from the exterior of individual units in the building?
They do, and and it's an interesting kind of perspective on buildings with respects to their bylaws. If you look at the bylaws, it actually says things like Christmas decorations are only permitted from December 15th till January 10th.
Okay.
Right? Christmas lights, whatever. They're forgetting that there's all their other types of religious festivals through the year, like Ramadan and Diwali and and Hanukkah. We have all these other festivals where people may want to have lights. They may have celebrations of some sort and decorations. No different than Christmas. And so, strata corporations need to look at their bylaws in a more broader perspective. That decorations or lights are permitted for 2 weeks prior to the celebration and must be removed within a week after the celebration.
Right.
Because they can't discriminate against any of the expression with respect to the freedom of religion, right? And the expression associated. So if you're going to permit Christmas decorations, you need to permit the other types of decorations as well.
So this would be why in some cases they just say no decorations of any kind at any time, year-round. That's the way that this building is going to be run.
Exactly. That way no one is, providing an expression on behalf of anyone else. And it also goes to the building system. If you're in a new building, especially if you're in a building that has wood soffits and custom siding, whether it's hardy plank or vinyl or, stucco on the building, you always want to be extremely cautious that people are not fastening decorations to the building with screws and nails and hooks that are penetrating the building envelope. The building envelope warranty is valid for 5 years, and you don't want an opportunity for the envelope to be damaged. So, Strata should look at how things could be hung, if there's a way of hanging them, or whether they could be mounted. And the other thing is be pretty clear that nothing can be altered on the building envelope. Even putting in screws to hanging lights would be a violation of the standard bylaws, because you would be making an alteration to the exterior of the building or the common property.
Well, and some people will go, okay, but if I want to put the Christmas lights up and down the hallways and make this place look really seasonal and lovely, I have two choices. Either I can wrap the light strings around the sprinkler heads, or I could put these little screws and little hooks, and that'll hold them up. Either way, you are in violation of the building's bylaws, right?
Well, you would be if you're doing this that in any way that it may be an alteration of common property. So strata corporations, if there are clear guidelines on what's permitted, you may wrap your Christmas lights around the rails of your balcony, but
fair enough.
Cannot fasten them to the building system with any screws, nails, tape, epoxies, anything that may cause damage to the building envelope. Those types of bylaws are very helpful, and even if you don't have those bylaws, a little common sense would go a long way.
Well, we had this discussion a couple of months ago, didn't we, when we were talking about the flag bill that the feds were toying with at the time, and it had nothing to do with the legitimacy of demonstrating one's patriotism. It had everything to do with the base that holds the flag to the wall of your place being screwed in from the outside, and therefore in some way damaging that exterior of the building, which in fact is common property, even though it's outside your apartment on your balcony.
It can cause a lot of damage to the building, which over a period of time can result in a lot of damage into the wall assemblies on the building.
So by and large, Christmas lights or flags, if you can find a way to safely install them that doesn't in any way damage the building, and a screw into a wall is, in insurance terms, damaging a building, then 9 times out of 10, you're okay, right?
Provided your bylaws permit it, right? But don't forget, we have different types of strata corporations, because we could have a bare land strata corporation which looks like a typical subdivision with detached houses on it, and the strata has no responsibility for maintenance or insurance of those houses, unless there's something prescribed in the bylaws, which is rare. And each person then has their own opportunity. But again, the bylaws in a bare land could still apply. Holiday celebrations or Christmas lights may not be put up any earlier than December 15th and must be taken down by January 10th. Maybe a longer period, shorter period, but even in a bare land, the bylaws can apply as well. So, it's even though you have your autonomy of having your detached house, you're still subject to the bylaws of the strata corporation.
You touched on this in one of your Vancouver Province columns a couple of weeks ago, this whole matter of insurance coverage, and by law, every strata council is obligated to arrange for and maintain a constant level of insurance coverage. But, they change companies and change coverage and policies and so on. But when they go to change insurance, this came up in the paper a couple of weeks ago, this should be a relatively easy process, but it never seems to be. Where do people get hung up?
Well, they get lured. I think what happens is they get enticed by the fact that somebody comes to them and says, I can give you a policy that has better rates. or I can give you a policy that has a lower deductible.
Okay.
And
I
so
guess strata councils are approached by insurance sellers from time to time with precisely that pitch.
Well, in every year, both the strata councils and the strata manager should probably, 2 months before the policy renews, be going out and shopping for policies.
Sure,
right? Go out to the brokerages and shop for policies. But what happens is they get enticed by what seems to be an attractive policy, and may have cost 5 or 10% less than what the policy the previous year cost. But what they're not acknowledging is what's different between this policy and the other policy.
Chances are, if you're paying less, you're going to get less.
Well, you're getting less, or your risks are increased.
Okay.
Right. And which means you're also getting less in the event of a significant claim. And what we see is a kind of a degradation towards people writing co-insurance policies. And co-insurance is really, in simple terms, and it's very complicated because the policies are all quite different. But co-insurance is, in simple terms, underinsurance. The Act says you have to insure for full replacement value. So if you have an appraisal on the building this year for full replacement value under the current market construction conditions,
then you're required by law to have insurance to cover that dollar number, whatever it may be.
Exactly.
Okay.
So if it says it's $25 million appraisal value, that's your obligation, is to cover for the $25 million appraisal value.
Okay.
And that appraisal and that replacement value isn't just about the fact that 3/4 of the building or a quarter of the building was burnt and we had to redo a part of the roof. It also contemplates what the current building codes are at the same time. You could have an older building that, as a result of significant damage, may have some significant code upgrades required at the same time.
Retrofittings would become compulsory at some point.
Could be, yes.
And then, in which case, your insurance may or may not address that, right?
Well, and that's what you want your insurance to address. And if you had a total loss, are you insured for the total loss? Is there some way to compensate for that? I think the key for strata councils and strata owners is when you're changing policies, what you want from your broker is you want a document that clearly states what the differences are. What's changed? What are the exemptions I'm getting? Because exemptions will be buried. You see across the front of policies, this policy may contain a clause that limits the amount of insurance. Well, okay, what is that?
Sure.
We want you, the broker, who is the expertise in the field, we want you to articulate for us in writing what is not covered. What are the limitations? If this co-insurance clause has underinsurance limitations, we need you to articulate for us what those underinsurance limitations are. And I think when the consumer is then aware that there are limitations, or that they're underinsured, or suddenly they have an exemption, like human rights disputes are exempt, all of a sudden the consumer steps back and says, this might not be the policy for us. And don't wait till the last minute, 24 hours before your policy renews.
Exactly.
Start this exercise 2 months in advance of your policy renewal.
Well, here we are with just about 10 days or so left in calendar year 2011. Oh, and there's this little matter of Christmas very much front and center on most of our agendas right now, but it's close to year-end, close enough that, it's a good time to talk about these things, Tony. We need to take a break right now, but when we come back, we'll apply some of this insurance think to the individual strata unit owner, and maybe a checklist that you can provide us, that a timely way over the next week and a half or so that you can go through as you go through the end of the year and just check off some insurance issues to take a look at. Tony Gioventu is the Executive Director of the Condominium Homeowners Association of British Columbia. I'm Sterling Fox. This is Key Pacific's Talk About Strata, and we'll be right back.
There's still more ahead with Experts on Call, the show focused on delivering relevant and beneficial consumer information. This is Experts on Call on AM 650.